Hi, I'm Dave Ingebretson, and LeRoy Hyatt and I would like to welcome you to another edition of Fly Tying, the Angler's Art. And as usual, we've got a variety of flies to tie tonight. We're going to start out with a Waterboatman dry, then we're going to tie a big hairy bass bug called Olson's Deceiver, and we'll finish up with a wet fly called the iron blue spider. What can you tell us about this Waterboatman?
Waterboatman. I have tied a few of these. I have never seen the hatch like I'm told it comes off. People tell me it's almost like being in a hailstorm.
You know, I've seen it a couple of times. You always see these waterboatmen and backswimmers going around, but one time I was on a smallmouth pond, and these things were just dive bombing into the water. They'd hit with a splat, and the smallmouth were just gorging on them.
Wow.
And I didn't have anything to match, but the next time I went, I did, and I caught fish. You just whop it down, let
there
it
it
hit,
is.
and,
yeah. Well, let's get started. We'll use the 6/0 black. I will dub an underbody of black dubbing. Then there will be a silver tinsel rib over the top of that. It will have a rubber leg, and it will have a shell back of the pheasant tail fibers.
That's what's interesting, is they do have, these at least had a light back.
Yes.
And in fact, I was trying to come up with a pattern, and I didn't have some light tan quills, duck quills, but I soaked some white ones in coffee.
Oh yeah.
For a long time, and they got a tan color out of it, and it worked very well.
Now what I have is a standard wet fly hook in the vise. This is a size 12, and I'll run that thread to the rear. And then the first thing I'm going to tie on is this shell back. Now we won't do anything with this right away. It will come over after the fly is completed, but now's the time to get it in.
And probably tie it in so that when it folds forward, it's the light part that's showing.
Yes.
That surprised me to look at these things and see that these I fished at least had such a light colored back, which was really the wings folded back over.
Butts down, and then we'll tie in the dubbing. And this is not going to be heavy dubbing, very sparse, because I have to wrap over the top of it some silver tinsel. The only thing we're going to end up with is a black ball of dubbing at the front and at the rear of the fly. The rest of it will all be silver.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So here we go to the front. And I can't go too far forward because I have to still put on that rubber leg, and the didn't get quite enough dubbing. I want just one little bit more.
Now, did you get the rib tied in, or are you going to do that in the front?
No, there's no rib.
Oh, I thought you said it was silver rib.
Oh, well, the silver will cover that body, almost totally cover it. And I don't understand why that is, but that's...
So you're going to tie that in, though, at the front?
Yes, because then I'm going to double wrap.
Ah.
Now I'm going to come to the back, and I'm not leaving, or trying not to leave, gaps in it. There will be some.
That's really odd.
Almost to the back, and it will leave that one little ball of dubbing there, and then I'm going to come back to the front again.
Well, how strange.
Then I'll tie off this tinsel right there. And then I'm going to get a little bit more dubbing. Yeah, this is a different Waterboatman pattern. I don't know that
I can't imagine why it would be all silver.
Ever seen one. Oh, it's not. It's got the black little
ball.
Well, I know,
but basically the body is silver.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
And then we'll take one rubber leg. Oh, there's one already stripped off. Take one rubber leg, and I'm going to tie that right on top of that black ball of dubbing that we had right there. I'll figure exit.
You want these to project out of the side.
Out to the side.
Because these things paddle around and pushing on that,
And then we just fold over that wing case. Fold it over, tie it down. And I, like you, I cannot understand that black dubbing in the silver body unless it's some way that they have something on an abdomen that just kind of reflects light.
It must be.
Don't know.
No, I don't know that pattern at all. I was anxious to see you when you were telling me about it, to see you tie it.
It's a good looking little fly. Put a whip finish on it. Now I'm going to stand the legs up, and these are not real long.
No.
I'll clip them there. That may still be just a little bit long. I'll do just a little bit more off. That may be about right.
And you can rotate, yeah.
But there you can see that little black dubbing
Yeah.
at the front and the rear. I want to put some head cement on it.
I would suggest too that people try it with a variety of underbodies.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones I tie had, you know, the completely dark. You might also try it with peacock.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
A complete
Sure.
peacock body without the silver.
And then I'm going to also run some of that head cement over the top of that pheasant wing case.
Yeah.
Just give it a little
Now,
bit more
I didn't even know
durability.
until that day, I didn't even know these things flew.
I didn't either. Somebody has told me that.
That's what that shell back is the light colored wings laid over the back.
Oh, I see.
And when these things, you'd get them crawling around and you'd see them come up and raise those wings. Then all of a sudden they'd fly away.
But they hatch from underneath, come to the surface, and then fly then back to the surface.
Crash into the water.
To lay eggs. Okay.
And honestly, the smallmouth bass were just gorging on them.
Well, I've never heard of the bass. I've heard guys talk about the trout doing that.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
But that's a neat little water boatman.
Oh yeah, and those legs will
Different.
twitch.
Oh,
and,
just go crazy with them.
looks
You could probably fish that also as a back swimmer.
Yeah, yeah.
I really think you could.
Or just make it all black
Mm-hmm.
and make a back swimmer out of it.
Well, there's I'm totally blank. What did we just tie?
Water boatman.
A water boatman.
Now, speaking of back swimmers, have you ever seen fish eat those?
No, I never have.
I haven't either. I mean, I've seen hundreds of them on the water, but I've never seen a fish take one. But you could sure tie one if you wanted to.
There's a water boatman. It's got the pheasant tail for the back. It's got black dubbing, front and rear, covered with silver tinsel, and a black round rubber leg.
Quick and easy to tie.
It is very easy to tie. And you know, I think that fly would float very low in the water too.
Oh yeah. All right, this next fly we're going to tie is a big clipped deer hair bass bug. It's called Olson's Deceiver, and it's basically a red and white fly, and I think it's to match the old classic Basserino bass plug, which was white with a red head. Why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, I'll use a red 6/0 tying thread. It'll have bucktail for an undertail, and then it'll have crystal flash for an overtail. We're going to surround that with the American white hen hackle, and then I will use the natural deer hair rather than the pure white. The red then will speak for itself, and then we'll have a collar of red hackle. Now I have a size 1 bass hook in the vise.
I want to tell you a little bit about that bass hook. This is a Japanese rubber worm hook. It's got a ringed eye, a wide gap, and it's extremely sharp.
It is very sharp.
Look for it in a shop that has bait fishing gear as this Japanese worm hook. And I think you'll be able to find it. But I use that on a lot of my bass poppers.
Oh, do you?
And my streamers.
Well, it has a nice wide gap.
I like the wide gap when you've got a big head like this, a big either a popper body or whatever. And I like it being so sharp.
Now I'll take a little clump of this white bucktail.
In fact, they're fairly expensive hooks. It seems to me they're around $5 for 6 of them.
Ooh, that is on the spendy
but
side.
But again, it's you don't use that many of them.
Okay. Get this clipped off. We'll get it tied in. Bind all those butts down and come back over it one more time. Then I'm going to take several strands of this crystal flash. And here you could use silver, you could use, I've got pearl, you could use that multicolor. I don't really think that would make that much difference.
Pearl is nice, especially on a white fly.
And this is going to go right on top of that bucktail. And I want it to come out about the same length. And I'll get rid of those butt sections there of that. And then I'm going to take 2 feathers off of that American white hen hackle. And I'm going to tie it on either side of that bucktail and crystal flash we just put in. What this is going to do is just encompass those in that system.
Now you're putting them concave sides together.
Yes.
Now this is where some variation can be applied. I'd also like that fly if you use 2 feathers on a side and have them curve outwards, splayed outward with the concave sides out. And then it gets to be like legs and kick when you move, more. And there'd be a lot of movement. And I would say try it either way, both ways.
Although this will flirt a little bit, not as much as what you're talking about, that flared section. Now, got all that pretty well bound down. Now, if I had the white, this is where I would use it. But I have just the natural, and it's fairly light in color.
Well, I won't tell them why we're using the white, or the natural, because one of us happened to forget the white material at home, and one of us lives about 30 miles away, so we didn't go get it, did we?
No, no, I didn't go get it.
Oh, I wouldn't say who it was. I wasn't going to tell them.
All right, I'll flare that around. Go right on around the hook. I'm going to go backwards just a little to make sure that it's back tight against that.
But you know, this is such nice light deer here.
It's very light,
just
yeah.
fine.
What I would use would be the white deer belly here.
Yeah.
And I know right where it is. It's laying on my desk.
Well, I forgot these hooks yesterday, so.
And again, take a wrap around, back into the other. And you could mash this together. You could get as much pack in there as you want. Some people like them very, very tightly packed.
Well, I think
some
with
people
the
want
heads
them.
on a bass bug like this, it's well to pack them pretty solid. In fact, when I do a big hair popper like that, clipped hair here, I use a packer. And I put a little rubber-based cement on the hook, and I pack them tight as I can get them. It just lets me clip them down. That's
about half the length of the hook shank. I'll get my tying thread in front, and now I'm going to change color. Now we'll go red. Give quite a variation in color on this bug.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but I grew up as a plug fisherman for bass, and the old Bassarino was white with a red front. And I think it had a scoop on it. I don't recall that it had any kind of tail, but red and white, that was a bass
Was
popper.
it a popper?
Well,
you cast it with a casting
rod, or later a spinning rod. But you just saw that, and they made them sinking plugs as well. But the red and white, that was just, you saw it, well, you knew that's a bass plug, bass popper.
And one more
So I think, this is just a fly fishing version of that.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I know darn well that's going to be a good one.
I'll pack that together again.
Now here we were talking about largemouth bass.
Oh, I think it would probably work also on smallmouth.
Probably would.
I really do.
Probably would.
Now I've got it tied. I want to get a small whip finish on the front, take it out of the vise, and trim it.
Oh, that's looking good.
Okay, trim that belly flat, just like with all of them.
And of course we do that to open up the gap of the hook.
Yeah, even though this is a wide gap.
Also why we use a wide gap hook. We want to be able to hook that fish.
And then I'm just going to trim around those feathers. This is the time-consuming part of this fly. And then the rest of the fly is just pretty well trimmed just straight. There isn't any taper to it.
Nope.
It's just totally straight.
Of course, that's your option, but the original pattern that we've seen was straight.
I'm going to run my scissors just around here just a little bit. Got a bunch of stragglers hanging on. Then back in the vise.
Oh, that looks good.
And we'll put the
Yeah, this is another odd feature, the hackle in front. Traditionally, you see bass bugs with hackle collar behind the head, but this is an unusual feature of this one.
Well, I had a red feather laying there, but I don't know where it went. So grab another one here. If I can get it separated. I'll tie it in by the butt.
I like the looks of that hair work.
Take a couple of 3 wraps of that little red hackle in front.
Now you want the hackle a little longer than the head is wide, I suppose.
Just a little. But I don't know what the purpose of that hackle is.
No, I haven't seen that before. I found this fly. But that's what the boss calls for in the book, so.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Must have probably been Olson himself.
Could have been. Build a little head on it.
That'll give a little extra movement around there.
It'll move a little bit of water.
Yeah.
And there's an Olson's Deceiver.
Boy, doesn't that look nice?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I would probably do a little bit more trim work on it if we had time to do it.
I like the way you keep the colors separate.
Yeah, they were separated out pretty nice.
Yeah, that's a good-looking fly.
The head cement on it. There's an
Olson's Deceiver. That's the Olson's Deceiver, and tell us quickly what you used.
White bucktail for a tail, pearl crystal flash also for the tail, 2 white American hackle, hen hackle feathers, white and red deer hair spun and clipped, and red hackle in front.
All right, now we're going to tie a wet fly, a typical soft hackle, but one with some very subtle special differences. This is called the iron blue spider, and we're going to use a real old classic technique for making the body. So watch closely. LeRoy?
There's virtually nothing to the fly. We'll use nothing more than a fluorescent red 6/0 tying thread. I'm using muskrat. The pattern said you could either use muskrat or mole. I don't have any mole. And then we'll use a Hungarian partridge for the hackle. I have a size 12 standard wet fly hook.
And again, you can tie this in a wide range of sizes, 18s to 10 or 8.
Yeah, I suppose you could. I've never seen one that small.
I've never seen one as big as an 8 either,
No.
but you know, down to 16 certainly.
And you know, I probably, like you and most everybody out there, I subscribe to almost every fly fishing, fly tying magazine that comes out. And soft hackle has always been intriguing to me. I don't know why, it just always has.
Well, because they work.
Yeah, well, I read this article in this magazine that came out, reread it, went down, tied some flies, had the opportunity then to go fish it, and it was unbelievable. The difference that the red thread, which also becomes an integral part of the body, will make when that fly gets wet. Now this fly you do not want dubbed heavy at all. I want that red thread. Pardon?
Extremely sparse.
Extremely sparse. I want that red thread to show through. I'm not going to make a dubbing loop with it.
And this is a very old technique.
It's got to be.
That in the early days of fly fishing, before the dry fly was even invented, they wanted that thread dubbing combination because of what it does when it gets wet.
Well, yes, and you know that it will also change appearance of this fly when it gets wet.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Vary the color of that thread that you're using. Now you can see that I've left a very distinct red butt back at the back. It's the way I want it. Now I'm going to come forward. I'm not wrapping it close together at all. I want it separated. Got too much dubbing. Just strip that off. But a mole, if we had mole, I'm sure that would be considerably darker than what this is.
Well, and again, I think it's a chance for people to experiment with various combinations of body color and thread color, keeping in mind that it needs to be so sparse that when it's wet, the two meld together
will shine through. Color. That's right. And I have used this fly primarily in lakes, but you know, I'm positive it would work also in a stream.
Sure.
Now, I've done the same thing we've always done before. I've taken a Hungarian partridge, and here again, You could change that color of the hackle. You could go to grouse. You could go to some kind of a lighter honey hackle. I'll tie it in by the tip.
The Hungarian partridge is nice because it's a flecked feather, and the fibers are long,
and it has good coloration.
Now, a fly doesn't get much more simple than that to tie.
Well, there I
but
just broke it.
again, it's well, yeah, that's one problem with
partridge.
Huns, partridge, any of those, they're very, very soft and delicate. I break them. I get so mad at myself.
Oh, I do too.
It's so heavy-handed.
Well, maybe this time. And then as you wrap, again, we're going to stroke those to the rear.
Yeah. And really only maybe 3 turns is all you need.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say 2.5.
Yeah.
And I'm going to space that out. I can see a little bit of red now between that wrap I just put on.
Doesn't that look good?
Come up here to the top and again put it on.
Yeah.
You know, I think, in my opinion, at least from the people that I talk to, there are more and more people, fly fishers, that are starting to come back to the old wet flies.
I think so.
They look alive. They look at that breathing motion as it goes through the water.
And now we're speaking of these soft hackle flies, but also it's true of the old classic wet flies with the down wings even. People forget about them.
Oh.
But the thing that got me started thinking about it was years ago, Jim Leisenring and Pete Heide's book on fishing, tying the wet fly and fishing the flimp. And the flimp was sort of a damp fly combination of a dry fly and a nymph.
But it had that soft breathing.
They were the first emergers, really, the flimps. And then Sylvester Nemes came along with his soft hackle flies, and those are good books if you can find them yet. I don't know if the Leisenring Heide book...
I don't know if it is either.
And you know, Heide, I got to know Heide when I moved out here.
Oh, is that right?
Of all things, he worked for a big lumber company.
Huh.
But he was an excellent fly fisherman. I got to know him very well, and he took a liking to me. He used to make his bodies separately on a dubbing block.
Oh, really?
And he had these little hardwood blocks with little brads in.
My word, how long ago was this?
Oh, 120,
Oh, no, Dave.
Well, I moved out here in 72, and that's when I met him.
Well, now see the dubbing loops, or I mean the dubbing...
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? They're trying to come. They're coming back again.
Well, he had these dubbing blocks, and he'd roll it in. Then he'd set his body aside,
and then tie it in.
Very sparse, and then tie it. Well, he gave me one of those dubbing blocks he'd made.
Oh, really?
And I had him. He signed it for me, and that's sitting now in my fly tying room.
Wow,
and that's a real keepsake.
That is so neat.
Yeah.
Well, there's an iron blue spider. I'll tell you, I have personally used this fly. I have used it with a lot of success. I have not used it in a stream. I know it would work. You could also tie that body a little bit fuller if you wanted, but then I want more spacing between those. But there's an iron blue spider.
Now, I have used the soft hackles in streams.
Oh, I have too, but not this particular
well, not that
fly.
particular pattern, but the soft hackles in spring creeks or stillish water or even in fast water when fish are rising.
Yes.
And you don't have to see the fly.
Yes, no.
Put it out and let it swing. And,
they're taken as emergers.
They just whack it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. No, I've got a lot of lineup of soft hackles in my fly boxes now. Well, that's it for tonight. What do we tie? Quick.
Olson's Deceiver.
Olson's Deceiver. We started out with the
iron
blue spider. This is the iron blue spider. What did we start
what was
with?
the first one we tied.
Oh, we started with something. Tune in again next week, and we'll be just as confused. Have a good week.
What did we tie?
Dave and LeRoy have produced 2 100-minute videos covering basic trout fly selection and tying for the western and eastern United States. For basic western and eastern flies videos, call 1-800-883-0124 or visit our website at publictelevision.org. Cost of each video is $16.95 or get both for just $31.95 plus shipping and handling. You can also order the programs from this series. Each videotape includes 3 programs for just $22.95 plus shipping and handling. To order, call 1-800-883-0124 or visit us at our website publictelevision.org.
For more information on this series, please visit our website, publictelevision.org.